The night wind combed the grasslands of Copper Creek like a ghostly hand, making the old ranch house groan and whisper. Inside, the fire in the stone hearth glowed low and steady, throwing soft light over worn floorboards and the woman kneeling on them, Anna Mae Parker, the poor widow everyone in town either pitied or judged, had her hands clasped so tight in prayer her knuckles were white. Beside her, curled against her skirt, her little boy Eli slept, his face pressed into the faded homespun, his bare feet sticking out from trousers that were already too short. In the rocking chair near the window, under a heavy wool blanket, sleeping sat Jacob Ryder, richest rancher for 3 counties, owner of more land than a man could ride in a day, and the one soul stubborn, enough to invite gossip by taking in a widow and her boy as winter hands. His eyes were closed, his breathing slow, his chest rising and falling, like any tired man's might after a long day working cattle. But Jacob wasn't asleep. Not even close. Beneath his half-lowered lashes he watched, Anna like a man studying a map that might lead him home or to ruin. Earlier that week, he'd stood in front of the bank in town and overheard 2 ranchers talking. "She's only with him for the money," one had muttered. "You'll see. Sooner or later she'll take what she can and disappear. Can't blame a woman, desperate as she is." Another voice had chimed in. "Ryder's a fool. That widow's playing him. She'll bleed him dry and leave." Him colder than last year's snow. Jacob had ridden home with those words lodged under his ribs like a splinter. He prided himself on reading men and weather, cattle and markets, but he knew next to nothing about women who'd seen more sorrow than comfort. All he knew about Anna Mae was what the town whispered. Her husband had died in a mining accident, leaving her with debts, a sick child, and nothing but grit in her eyes. She'd come to his ranch in early autumn, asking for work, any work, she'd said, hands trembling but voice steady, and Jacob had taken one long look at her and told her she could help his aging housekeeper Martha and tend the kitchen and chickens in exchange for a roof and honest pay. He'd also, unannounced and quietly, paid off the note on the broken-down shack she once called home, so the bank wouldn't take it out from under her. He'd done it telling himself it was charity, Christian duty. But every time he caught Anna humming softly while hanging laundry, or saw her brushing Eli's hair back from his feverish forehead, or heard her thank him for even the smallest kindness, as if she were receiving a king's ransom, something tighter and more fearful than duty twisted in his chest. Feelings, he told himself, were dangerous as floodwater. So tonight, after Martha retired early to her little room off the kitchen, and Eli nodded off by the fire, Jacob had told Anna he'd sit up a while longer. Then he'd eased into the rocking chair, pulled the blanket over his legs, closed his eyes, and pretended to sleep. He wanted to know what she did when she thought no one was watching. Would she slip into his office and rummage through his desk? Take cash from the tin box he kept on the shelf behind the ledger books? Would she curse him, call him a fool, vow to take everything she could? He hated himself for the suspicion, but the words he'd overheard kept circling like buzzards. Now as he listened, her whisper-thread voice reached him, surprisingly clear over the crackle of the fire. "Lord," she murmured, "I know you see me, so I will say this simple: thank you. Thank you for this roof, this warm fire, the food you set before Eli tonight." Her voice trembled but did not break. "Thank you for Mr. Ryder, for giving us work when no one else would, for letting my boy sleep safe, where the roof don't leak and the wind don't come under the door. I know the town talks, Lord, you know they do. They think I came here to chase money, to trap a rich man, to use him. But you know what's in my heart. You know I'd scrub floors and mend fences and work my hands raw before I took a coin that wasn't earned." Jacob felt his breath catch. His hand curled under the blanket, fingers digging into the wool. Anna paused, then continued, her tone even more hushed. "But you also know my secret, Lord, so I'll say it plain. Since Mr. Ryder sleeps in only you can hear." Jacob's heartbeat thudded like hooves in his ears. He almost opened his eyes, but he forced himself to stay still, muscles locked. "I am afraid," Anna whispered. "Afraid every day. Afraid he'll decide we're too much trouble. Afraid Eli's cough will get worse and I won't have medicine. Afraid the winter will be hard. And I'll fail them both, my boy, and the man who's been kind when he didn't have to be." She bowed her head lower, strands of her pale hair slipping forward. "I know I have nothing to offer a man like him. Not youth, not pretty dresses, not a big name or a dowry. Just a heart that's been broken and stitched. back together more times than I can count. But if you would grant me one thing, Lord, one thing only." Jacob's fingers stopped digging. He held his breath. "Let me serve him well. Let me pay back every kindness 10 times over. Let me protect his name when people speak cruel. If his heart is lonely, let it not be because I failed in kindness. If his hands are weary, let mine be ready to help. Even if I am only a worker on this ranch, even if I never belong truly to this home, let me leave it better than I found it. Let me be a blessing, not a weight. And if it is your will," she added so softly Jacob nearly missed it, "if you ever see fit to place love in his heart for me, let it be real, not built on pity or gossip or fear. Until then, guard my tongue, my thoughts, and my actions. Let me never ever be the kind of woman they say I am." Jacob froze, stunned to his bones. He had expected anything but this, that the woman people accused of scheming for his money would be on her knees begging not for wealth, but for the chance to repay kindness. Anna lowered her hand slowly, glancing at Eli's sleeping face. She leaned down and kissed his brow. "You're safe, baby," she whispered. "As long as Mr. Ryder will have us, we're safe." Jacob swallowed hard. A knot had formed in his throat, thick and sharp-edged. He'd never heard anyone pray for him like that, not even his own kin. Most prayers said his name as a man to be envied, not a soul who might be lonely or weary. He'd come into this night thinking he was the one running the test. Now it felt as though the test was his and he'd barely begun to pass. Anna rose slowly, her knees cracking with the motion. She moved around the room quietly, picking up folded laundry from a chair, setting aside a pair of boots he'd left near the door. She stopped at his coat hanging on the peg. He felt her gaze on it and braced, shame burning his chest as he remembered the weight of bills in the inside pocket. If she slipped her hand in, he almost wanted her to, just so his suspicion could make sense. But she only lifted the coat, shook it once to straighten it, then carefully draped it over the back of a chair so the wool wouldn't crease. Her fingers brushed the pocket by accident, and she startled, then pulled her hand back as if burned. "That's his," she murmured. "Not mine." Then she moved on, banking the fire thoughtfully, careful not to let it die nor send sparks flying. She pulled the blanket a little higher on him, tucking it near his shoulders with a touch so gentle it shocked him. "Good night, Mr. Ryder," she whispered. "You don't know what you've done for us, but one does, and he will bless you more than I ever could." She blew out the lamp, leaving only the glow of the hearth and the cold, watchful eye of the moon peering in through the window. She lay down on the braided rug beside Eli, wrapping an arm around her child, placing herself between him and the draft creeping under the door. Jacob stared at the ceiling behind his closed lids, his heart roaring in his ears. He felt like a thief who'd broken into his own house. He'd trespassed into a sacred space, hearing words never meant for his ears. His test had backfired. Instead of exposing her, it had exposed him. His doubt, his fear, his unwillingness to trust what stood plainly in front of him. A woman who, with nothing to her name, still prayed she wouldn't be a burden. For a long time he lay there, listening to the crackle of the fire and the soft, even breathing of the two souls who, somewhere between autumn and winter, had become part of his life. When sleep finally came for him, it wasn't the heavy, satisfied slumber of a rich man with full barns. It was the restless doze of someone, standing at the edge of a choice that would change everything.